Good Friday morning, everybody. Hope you're all having a fantastic week. It's a sunny day here in Delray. Finally, we've been having several gloomy ones in a row. So today's video is going to be a little bit different than the norm. First of all, we're trying out a new microphone system, thanks to one of our Sunday broadcast viewers did a donation. So I use those funds to buy a new microphone. So no longer do you see a microphone sitting on the table in front of me, and hopefully the audio quality will be a little bit better. So I was kind of thinking about what to do to get some content out today, and I decided to pay this guy a little bit of attention. This is a Dark Impact, sold on the DFO3 platform. And what is unique, there's a couple unique factors about this particular Dark Impact. First of all, it's all molded in white, 100%. This one is in very good shape. There are some scratches on the bottom, and actually it was kind of funny. The gentleman from whom I purchased it warned me that this car was used by his son and was just played with in the yard, and that it was going to be beat up, and don't have the greatest expectations. The thing showed up and it's in darn good shape. Sure, there's some scratches on the shock towers, and the bottom has, shows signs of use, but the tires are brand new. The body is in great shape. There are a couple of unique components about this chassis that I want to show you, but what I'm going to do that I've never done in any of my videos is I am now going to change the camera angle so that hopefully I can give you guys a slightly different view of this. Additionally, I'm going to bring in a motor that I've purchased from Aero Accessories, Dean DiGiorgio. So I picked I'll show you right now in this clip. So the motor that I've chosen for this particular project is the Tamiya Superstock BZ. I've never had one of these. You like my hiding spot? By the way, don't forget, guys, subscribe, hit the bell, all of that, does a lot for me. So please take 1 second out of your time and do that. So I picked the BZ motor, and I'm going to admit something to you that maybe is a bit dorky, but everybody knows that I run the RZ motor in everything. I chose the BZ for two reasons. One reason carries about 10% of the weight, and the other reason carries about 90% of the weight. The 10% reason is I've never run a BZ, and I'm curious to see how it acts. The reason that carried 90% of the weight is that, well, in addition to being just flat gorgeous, it is blue. So there's your Superstock BZ, and since the car is primarily blue and white, and I had never run a BZ motor, I figured, what a perfect pairing. Blue and white, blue motor, blue and white car, doesn't come much better. Actually, this actually appears to have come with the foam boot that goes over the end bell. That's interesting. The RZs don't come with that, so that's interesting. Also, I noticed that the heatsink on the brush is black on the negative terminal and red on the positive terminal. Sorry, I keep looking over here because that's where my mirrored iPad is, so I can see what you guys are seeing. So there's your motor. It's gorgeous. So we're going to fit that now. I'll tell you, we're going to change a couple things. Oh, you need to be back here to see that. We're going to change a couple things, and that's going to be in this video as well, before we actually get it bolted up. But let me just take a second and show you the chassis. Once again, up close, the chassis is in good shape. There's a little bit of yellowing, but we all know that the peroxide will take care of that. What's interesting about this chassis is, first of all, your servo mounts here, and then you run a linkage up to the ball there. So you've got quite a long linkage to run for your servo. So that should be interesting. The other factor here, it's nice that it comes with an aluminum transfer shaft, drive shaft, whatever you want to call it, to go from the front gearbox to the rear versus a lot of the Tamiyas that have the plastic. But what really surprised me about this chassis is that the battery is not accessed through the top of the chassis. You do not remove the body to access the battery. You come over to this side, you pull a pin, and then you remove, excuse me as I fumble through this, you remove this pin and your battery hatch door falls off. So that is your access to the battery pack. And I actually thought that that was quite interesting. I guess what made that interesting to me is that there's not much to this body shell. There's two body posts in the front, one in the rear. Getting it on and off is really not an issue. It's actually quite easy, as I'm making it look difficult. It's really quite easy. So I'm a little perplexed as to why they chose on the DF03 to have the battery, there we go, it just popped in. Why they chose to have the battery accessed through the bottom. So there's our basic DF03. I assume we're gonna find a slipper clutch in here, as when I opened up my box of parts, there was a bag that said DF03 slipper clutch kit. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and I'm going to take this cover off. But before we go to installing the motor, the BZ is a bushed motor. And I'm going to knock the Hobby Room boat off its cradle. The BZ is a bushed motor, and we're going to change that. We're going to go ahead and install a set of ball bearings. So hold tight, let me retool this table right quick, and I will show you guys how we can knock a set of ball bearings into a stock motor. So let's go ahead and get at that. Okay, so I've gone and I've grabbed what I believe to be, where can I put this so it stays in camera shot? There we are. I've gone and grabbed what I believe to be the most basic set of, hand tools that the average hobbyist would have around. And we're going to start by pulling the brushes out of the motor. We're going to release the springs, and that will allow us to pull these little brushes out. And no doubt, Astro, no licking. My pup likes to lick his toes. So that will net a picture that you no doubt have seen before, which is the motor with the brushes hanging out. Now, this is a stock motor, which means the timing is not adjustable. But it is a removable end bell. So what we're going to do is there are two screws, and you'll see the motor can is keyed. So, oops, little spring tab. You'll see that the motor can is keyed, so you can only get this back together one way. There's no particular way to goof this up or screw this up. I guess I've screwed some stuff up before that I've said is unscrew-upable. So I guess I should just keep my mouth shut. So there we go. There's our end bell lifted out of the way, and I'm going to set the screw there with it. We're going to go ahead and lift. Okay. There's a little ring in here that I now see needs to be turned. See, don't I just make this look so easy? That's just what I do. I make it look so easy. So we turn this ring, which allows us to, once we get the ring all the way turned, okay, that should allow us to release the armature. This is that ring that I was talking about, guys. And if you look, there's 4 indentations and there's also 4 nubs inside the can, and that is what that's what was holding us up. Now you do want to be super certain as you go through this that you've collected all the washers. Excuse me for licking my finger there, and that didn't even work. So we've got it fell right on the table. I'm such a numbnut sometimes. Okay, so we've got our can out and we've got our end bell out. I see that there is 1 small washer at the front of the armature, so we'll set that aside. I'm going to give this a little thump because that reveals 1 small washer at the back of the can. And now I'm going to break out my trusty Harbor Freight punch set. Now, granted, I'm doing this, I happen to have grabbed the right one. I'm doing this on my glass coffee table, so I grabbed a piece of wood. I would generally use a jeweler's hammer, but I grabbed a claw hammer because I figured that's what, you know, most people will have sitting around. But you give it a couple taps, and boom, your brass bush is out. So now we've got the motor can with no bushing in it, because that is right here. We're going to do the same to the end bell. We're going to set the end bell on our piece of wood. That one just, you saw, I didn't even have to tap it. And that released that bushing. So we've gotten that far with nothing more than a Phillips, a punch, a Phillips screwdriver, and a claw hammer. We've got the bearings out. Now we're going to match the bearings with the correct set. Now, of course, I always keep, well, I buy my bearings by, 10 and 20 at a time. So I might have a slightly more extensive inventory than average Joe, but whatever. So we've got our bearings here, of course supplied by Boca Bearing. And we're simply going to reverse the process now. So we're going to take our bearing, and this is the part where it gets just a little tricky sometimes, and there is a trick. Yeah, the rubber seal popped off. That is unusual, but it has happened. Must have fallen just right. These bearings are so small, guys, you got to remember. So there's a trick, as I was saying. If you put the bearing on a screwdriver, more often than not, you can feed it through the magnets and get a good start on it. Yeah, this is not one of those cases. This does not want to play nicely with me. Like I said, guys, I'm going to give you guys are going to get from me real content, not nonsense. So what you're seeing is exactly what it is that I'm doing. So I'm going to change gears here a little bit. Knocking the bearing out was super easy because it just required having a punch that was the correct size to fit the small end bell of the to fit through the hole in the end bell. Going back in, we're going to need a much different size punch. We're going to need a punch that is the size of the outer diameter of the bearing. The issue is getting the bearing down to its spot through the magnetic field, and it's even tough doing with a screwdriver. This block of wood happens to have a hole in it, so I'm going to take that to use that to my advantage, and I'm actually going to tap the end of the screwdriver. Yes, that has worked. That has worked. So now we've got our bearing, at least at a minimum, set in place. It's making a liar out of me. So we've at least got our bearing set in place. And now what we're going to do is we're going to switch gears and go to our punch. Of course, every bit of this, there's amazing magnets in these motors, guys. I mean, it is a chore to do this. In fact, I'm all the way going to switch gears. Let me try something. All right, much better. We've got a wooden dowel. So, let's go ahead and give that dude a couple taps. And we are just about there. Boy, I really would like to get in there with the metal punch, but it doesn't want me to. I'll have you guys know that I'm making a very easy process look difficult, when in fact it's not. So what I'm going to do, I'm being so cautious here because of my coffee table. I'm going to just set this on the floor real quick. I'm going to use the wooden punch and go ahead and just set the bearing the way it always needed to be set. So now we have a ball bearing in there. So what we'll do is we'll put our washer back on our armature. We will set our armature back in. Watch me put the armature in backwards. Guys, this is, maybe it's too early. Maybe I haven't had my enough of my energy drink yet. This is beginning to look more like our Sunday night broadcast than one of my polished videos. So, all right. So there we've got a ball bearing on the drive side. So we'll go ahead and set that aside. And in fact, you know what we can do now is we can take that pesky ring that was giving us guff earlier, and we can set that in. We can rotate it. Great. So that's now all ready to go back together. Now we've got our end bell. Same, I don't want to say same issue, but same story. Now this bearing, I happen to know, tends to pop right in. And it just did. No hammer required, no banging. So we are done with the wood. We are done with the hammer. These tools are now no longer necessary. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and put our bushings, or our washers, back into place. And we are going to find the little keyway that of course corresponds with the little tab. Yes, perfect. So we've got our end bell going back on. We're going to set this screw in first, and there's a reason, and I will tell you that reason here in just a second. All right, we've got that just barely snugged, and that is that this bolt has on it, you can kind of see it's showing on the camera as just a square piece of aluminum. It's a little contact that rubs on the bottom of this circuit board. It's a ground basically for that board. So you need to make sure that, you know, that screw goes back into that place with its contact. But guys, again, my fiddling and fumbling because it's early in the morning has made what is really a very easy process look difficult. So now what we're going to do is we're going to put our brushes back in. There's our spring. Get this brush sent back home. There's our spring. And we'll tuck the brush wires in because that looks nice. And there you have it. Now we have a fully ball raced BZ motor. Gone are the brass bushings. Those are no bueno, no good, and we are full ball bearing. So now what we're going to do is we'll go ahead and see what is going to be required. And I may as well do this on camera. It looks like you pop this shock out of the way, which is easy enough to do. I'm going to go grab a Tamiya tool. It amazes me that I don't have one handy. Okay, I'm going to grab a Tamiya tool. And I'm going to pop off, because this is a new mic, I don't know where it's picking up from. So I'm kind of trying to, like I said, you're working with me on this one. I'm going to pop off this wheel to maybe make life easier. This, I have to tell you, by the way, guys, is the only time I am not a sucker for blue anodized. I don't think it looks great. It has its place, it has its applications. It is not for me. I'm not the one to go through and just turn everything blue just because. But I felt, you know, given obviously the stickers and the body color, that it was very appropriate that this car had blue wheel nuts, because again, it's a match. So we went with it. So that cover screw comes off. This cover screw comes off. And there we have. I don't know if this is original or not, because I'm not quite familiar with this particular kit, and I didn't do much of any homework. Like I said, I bought this thing because I knew it was unique. It was on local marketplace, and just being us out, check that out. They give you a little cover that you turn to adjust your slipper spring, and that's actually built right in. So all you do is, once this is bolted up, is you twist this cover, remove it. That gains you access to your slipper spring, and then it falls back into a set of detents and allows you to make adjustments on the fly. So there we got that. I see we've got a 48 tooth arrangement. The diff feels good. The front diff feels good. If we end up doing a go through, of course, we'll pull this whole car apart and go through it. So let me take one quick second. I'm going to clean up my workspace. I'm going to find a pinion, the appropriate pinion for this, and we're going to go ahead and bolt it in. And I suspect that, just due to the layout of things, yep, that blingy blue will look quite nice, and it just will end up being a good place to park a BZ motor. So let me reconfigure. Let me grab some bolts for the motor. Let me grab a pinion, and I will be right back. Okay guys, now that I'm back, I am floored with what I found out. I shouldn't be, but I am. So let me tell you what I learned in that quick absence. I learned that although this looks like a 48 pitch spur, it is in fact not. The Tamiya is 0.05 different. You can use a standard 48 pitch spur or pinion, but it will be noisy. Of course, Tamiya has something proprietary. Now, also, I went to the bag that I received when I bought this car from the gentleman, And I shouldn't be surprised because, again, he was so nice through the whole process. He handed me a big bag of bits and I didn't really look much at it. And I was down just now because I realized I've got to order a Pinion, I've got to stop the video. Well, I went and I looked in the bag, and first of all, he included the Pinion, which blew me away. Then I went to find motor bolts that were short enough to go through this aluminum plate and not too far into the motor. And lo and behold, there's a piece of blue painter's tape in the bag with 2 screw heads sticking out, and that was stuck to the Pinion. So he actually included the Pinion and the motor bolts to make this all happen. I shouldn't be surprised, but again, this is why I have faith in humanity. There are good people out there. Also, I wanted to show you that it looks as though on the DF03 that the slipper clutch was an option altogether. So it looks like I've got an upgraded unit here, which is kind of nice, kind of good news for me. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to spin the grub screw out of the Pinion and do what I always do and just put a little bit of blue Loctite. Blue is the mildest of your thread locks. I just like to have it on there. You know, it's annoying when you're out playing and something falls apart and all of a sudden you're kind of stuck. So we've got our Tamiya Pinion on, which by the way is a 26 tooth, on our now ball bearing BZ motor. We shall fit this through, and then let's see if we index. Where are my bolt holes? There they are. So if we index the motor correctly, I'm going to have to turn this on its side. That way you guys aren't staring at the top of my head. I should be able to drop that motor screw in. Yep. Perfect. So now that I've got one holding that, I've already got the cap off, dipshit. So now that I've already got one holding that, I'm going to put a little bit of blue Loctite on the second bolt. God, this is not my morning, guys. But I hope you guys are enjoying the video. Because again, if you guys can get a couple laughs at my expense, then that is fantastic. I, for one, laugh at myself all the time. So if you can't laugh at yourself, then then I feel bad for you, because you got to be able to see the humor in your own ways. So now that I put the first bolt in to retain the motor to hold it, I put blue Loctite on the second bolt, ran it in. So now I'm going to go back and put some blue Loctite on the first bolt again. The reason that I do this is that blue Loctite cures in the absence of oxygen, which is to say that, if you put a drop on the table, it will likely stay wet for a very long time. But if you, let's say, put it on the threads of a bolt and then tighten it, then when that oxygen is, when it's deprived of that oxygen is when it goes into the curing process, and that's why I don't put Loctite on screws that I haven't done up yet permanently. So there we are, guys. We've got a ball bearing BZ motor in a White Dark impact that apparently has an upgraded slipper clutch setup. I don't need to tell you guys, you need to mind your mesh here, not too tight, not too loose. There's a million tricks. I've heard of people taking a piece of paper, mashing the pinion and spur together, and when the paper, then you do everything up and then pull the paper out and that leaves the correct amount behind. I don't like any of that. I like to get them as tight as I possibly can whilst still being able to move one independently of the other. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to throw my cover back on. And I think this might actually, I'm kind of starting to like this car. Like I said, this is only sat on the shelf behind me for the last year. I haven't paid it any attention other than blue lug nuts because I thought it needed it. And I actually, again, special ordered those from Dean. And this is my first time actually, spending any time with this car, with the DF03 in the Dark Impact. And it's really kind of cool. So I'm going to throw the wheel back on. We've got motor drive. Oh, here, before we put the wheel back on, I believe it would be wisdom of us to go ahead and snap the shocks back on. The price of these parts, guys, if you look online, white CVAs, all of these parts, to find them in white, they can be found. They're out there, but holy mackerel, do you pay for them. So either way, sorry about the clumsiness going through, putting the bearing, the bearings in the motor, specifically the one deepest in the can. Ah, yes, that all runs very nicely. And look at how well that blue end bell complements all the other blue on this car. And of course, I'm somewhat fooling myself because the motor is so buried that you really can't see it. So I've kind of stuffed $50 into a shelf queen, a $50 part that will never be seen. Just as we've buried a aftermarket slipper clutch setup in there that will never be seen. So there we go. For the moment, the DF03 White Dark Impact has power. I think I'm going to go ahead and just throw in my standard steering and radio gear setup. I'm not going to quote anything yet because I don't know just exactly what I'm going to use. I'm also going to trim down these body pins, but I'm not going to do that before seeing if I can purchase new ones, because I am now looking and I'm seeing that I think that these body pins, excuse the distraction and attention, yes, they are separate. They are not a part of the chassis. I'm going to look to see if I can get these body pins in white. And if I can, then I'll trim these down, make the model look a little bit nicer. God, this guy included everything. I mean, he even included the white servo arm, and of course, double-sided tape. I bet you there's a bolt in here. I bet you. Good thing I didn't bet you. There's no bolt in here. But what there is that's kind of neat is the top of the servo arm, servo saver, is also white plastic. So either way, this will be video 1, and forgive the clumsiness. It's early, but you know what? I wanted to put a video out, and I keep saying this until, and I will keep saying this, until I'm blue in the face. I want to give you quality of content, not polish or quantity of content. So there we have it. We have put a motor in our DF03 White Dark Impact, and the next video that you see on this will be putting the electronics in it, giving it a quick run. If I decide that I like it, then what we'll do is we'll go ahead and pull the car apart and clean it up and make it a thing. If not, it might get sold on, but I doubt it. It's too cool. Everything in my house is white. It's just such a unique piece. It wouldn't make really much sense for me to let this one go. So there you have it. All right, guys, go back to enjoying your Friday. I hope you have a fantastic weekend. Please, well, first of all, like, subscribe, hit notification bells. It's super important. And please join us Sunday night for our Sunday night broadcast on Facebook. I do always, of course, put up my email address, which is tyrannymotorsport@yahoo.com. That's tyrannymotorsport@yahoo.com. To link to PayPal if anybody would like to, contribute to the show. As I always say, no dollars that ever come in go into the models. It goes into camera gear, it goes into lighting gear, it goes into me putting out better content, better software. It goes into me giving you better content and never actually into the collection. The collection is mine. It's my responsibility to pay for my own toys. So once again, guys, thanks for joining. Hope to talk to you on Sunday, and have a great weekend.